Hello, I am Hamid Arbey. I am Microsoft MVP in Developer Technologies and .NET Consultant in CGI Canada. I would like to start by saying thank you for all for being here, and I'm really sorry because I wasn't able to join the session in Prague for reasons out of my control. So, to not lose this session, I decided to do it remotely, and I will keep available in social media like Twitter or email. You find it here in the presentation. During this session, we will describe the workflow to compile Docker-based ASP.NET Core Web application and to deploy it after to a Kubernetes cluster that is already running on the Azure Container AKS. After we will create CI/CD pipelines using Azure DevOps. So, the first step here is creating and configuring a KA and AKS cluster. After we move to Visual Studio to create a new ASP.NET Core Web application and deploy it. And we will finish by CI/CD pipelines Azure DevOps. Monolithics are broken down in smaller independently running components called microservices. Microservices are decoupled from each other and therefore they can be developed, deployed, updated, and scaled individually. Each microservice exposes its functionality or services via an interface, typically a REST API that is a standalone process. And each microservice can be packaged as a container, and each service instance can be deployed as a container. That is a simple way to be portable across many environments. To run containers at scale, we need to use Kubernetes for orchestration. So what's Kubernetes? Kubernetes is an open source system used to automate deployment, scaling, and management of containerized applications. It enables developers to deploy their application and for ops monitoring, rescheduling apps in the event of a failure hardware. It's an abstract way from the hardware infrastructure, and it exposes your whole data center as a single gigantic computational research. Azure Kubernetes Service AKS simplifies the deployment and operations of Kubernetes and enables you to dynamically scale your application infrastructure with confidence and agility. So, to start, we need Visual Studio installed in our machine to be able to create our application, web application. And we will need to install Docker Community Edition for Windows and the Visual Studio to create the project. This is the link, and you need to create an account to be able to download it. This is the link. We will open Docker Community after installing it, and we found here the shared drives where we can select local drivers you want to be available for your containers. Here we have C and E. After, we will try to configure it and manage the Kubernetes cluster. As you can see, after configuring Docker, it will be running. Now we will try to start Kubernetes by installing the clusters. Now, as you can see here, Docker is running, Kubernetes is running too. I have a Visual Studio installed on my machine and Docker for Windows Edge kernel with Kubernetes enabled. So let's define here what we do to create and deploy a web application in Azure Kubernetes Service. We will start our demo by creating cluster AKS. After, we'll show you how you can create an ASP Core Web application that contains the YAML file of Kubernetes and pre-configured Docker. After, we will try to deploy this application from Visual Studio and try to deploy it in the cluster created before, and we will finish by creating our CI/CD pipelines using Azure DevOps. Some basic notions, not all. It's really not really many parts. It's only to show you how we do it. AKS uses the service principle to access other Azure services like the Azure Container Registry ACR. Let's start our demo.